In this class, we will learn the first Mishna in Perek Hamafkid, which is a Masechtas Bava Metzia and Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Let's begin with a general outline of this class. So in this class, we will begin with the first Mishnah of Perek Hamafkid, and there are two cases in the Mishnah. Number one, the Mishnah will discuss a case where a Ganav stole the deposit from a Shemer Chinam, and the Shemer Chinam chooses to pay instead of take an oath. And number two, the Mishnah will discuss a case where the Shemer Chinam chooses to take an oath and not to pay, like we'll see in the Mishnah itself. So we basically have here two cases. Case one, the Shemer Chinam chooses to pay, and case two, where the Shemer Chinam chooses to take an oath. So let's see the Mishnah now in the flowchart form. So being that over here we're just learning the Mishnah, so the whole class is going to be in a blue box because that's where our teaching is in. We don't have any questions, any answers, so there's no process. So the Mishnah begins, if a person deposited by his fellow an animal or utensils, and they were stolen or lost. So we have the owner, he deposited by his fellow an animal or utensils. We'll give an example of an ox. And then it was stolen. And the one it was deposited by paid and didn't want to take an oath. The Shemer Chinam doesn't want to swear for whatever reason. He chooses not to swear. Maybe it's a very severe thing to swear in Bezdin. He says, I don't want to swear. Here's the money. And he pays for the ox that was stolen. Why do we say that he didn't want to take an oath? He paid and didn't want to take an oath. Because really a Shemer Chinam can take an oath and fulfill his responsibility. He didn't have to pay. He could have taken an oath. So if he chose to pay and not take an oath, the din is as follows. If the Ganav was found, he must pay kefil. And if he slaughtered or sold the animal, he must pay, depending on whether it's a sheep or an ox, 4 or 5 times the amount. Says the Mishnah, Lemi Meshalim, who does he pay it to? The Misha Pikadin Eslay to the Shemer Chinam. He pays the Shemer Chinam, and the reason for that is, like we'll learn more extensively in the Gemara, because when the Shemer Chinam chose to pay to the owner for the cost of the ox, the owner, in exchange for that payment, gives over to the Shemer Chinam the rights to kefil and the rights to collect dalet v'hei from the Ganav. So he pays it to the Shemer Chinam. So we see here the words are in red and green simply because the teaching is presented in a question-answer format, but it's not actually a question on what we taught, and therefore it's all part of the Mishnah, and like we'll see later, the color will turn into blue. So that's case 1 in the Mishnah. Case 2, if the Shemer Chinam took the oath and didn't want to pay, so we have the same exact case, but here he said, I swear it was stolen, and now he is absolved from any responsibility to pay, and he also needs to swear that he wasn't careless. So then the din is, if the Ganav was found, he must pay kefil. And if he slaughtered or sold the animal, he must pay, again, depending on whether it's a sheep or an ox, 4 or 5 times the amount. Lemi Meshalim, who does he pay it to? Laba'al Abikadin, to the owner of the object. Since the owner never gave over the rights to kefil, he receives the payment, or daled v'hei. So it comes out over here that the Mishnah teaches us 2 cases, but the primary teaching in the Mishnah is the first case, that in an instance where the Shemer chose to pay, so in exchange for that payment, the owner gives over to him the rights to kefil or dalet and hay, and therefore, when the Ganav is found, we don't say that the Ganav pays the Shemer for the original value since the Shemer paid it to the owner, and the rest the Ganav pays to the owner, because he stole the owner's object. The object did not belong to the Shemer, so really he should give the Shemer just the value that the Shemer paid up, but the rest, the kefil or the dalet and hay, should go to the owner. The Mishnah is teaching us over here that the owner gives over the rights to kefil and the rights to dalet and hay. He gives them over to the Shemer Chinam in exchange for the Shemer Chinam paying for the stolen deposit. And with that we completed the Mishnah, and we see over here again, like we pointed out earlier, that now it all turns into blue.